to the next presentation from Ivonne. So Dr. Ivonne Ortiz is going to be presenting a checklist for policymakers to realise fisheries management as climate action. Dr. Ortiz is a senior research scientist and associate director at the Cooperative Institute for Climate, Ocean and Ecosystem Studies at the University of Washington in Seattle. She specialises on ecosystem-based fisheries management and climate to fisheries models, with emphasis on spatial dynamics of food webs and how they respond to fishing, environmental and climate impacts. Dr. Ortiz also works on ecosystem assessments and indicators to inform fisheries management, and she has a BSc in biology from Mexico City and an MSc and PhD in fisheries from the University of Washington. Thank you, Dr. Ortiz. Please.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. Yes, and see you.
Thank you. So, I am actually going to expand a little bit on what Dr. Rogers was talking before. What actions can we actually take within fisheries management to actually lessen or lower the impact that we have on the carbon cycle? And this is a work actually compiling the work from many colleagues, several of whom have given a talk in the 2 previous days, and Rebecca can give you the links to see the videos if you were not able to attend those, or if you are interested in seeing them before or after this, in seeing them after this talk. In the meantime, I am just going to start here actually with, trying to, oh, there we go. With what the focus of this talk is, which is taking action and what policy instruments and what initiatives are best towards decreasing the effect of fisheries on the carbon cycle. And as you see, you can take actions throughout the webs, the food webs, the habitats, vessels, emissions, and of course pollution, but you can do quite a bit through different policy instruments and policy programs. This is just another look at this figure that Alex showed. What I want to emphasize here is that within fisheries management, you can actually have major impact by controlling the carbon emissions in vessels. You can, of course, always control the biomass of carbon within the fish, how much do you extract, but also how much you protect that biomass or restore that biomass, strengthening those natural processes that Alex was talking about. And then you also have the sediment carbon, which can be impacted by bottom gear. But again, there are modifications in the gear or best practices when using those gears that can ameliorate that resuspension of carbon. And then, of course, you also have biomass carbon in form of habitat structures that serve as nursery grounds or as feeding grounds, in particular sea grasses, kelps, kelp forests, mangroves. All these already have carbon trapped in there, and so restoring those and protecting those can certainly enhance or the amount of carbon that we keep sequestered in the ocean. Next, please. So what we're trying to do here is actually come up with a checklist of what actions you can take. And we've pinpointed them between mitigation and adaptation. So in mitigation, for example, what we are trying to do is reduce emissions and enhance carbon sinks. And to reduce emission, you can actually control overcapacity, shorten fishing trip lengths, make fishing vessels more energy efficient, and decrease fish weight and increase byproducts. And to enhance the carbon sinks, in contrast, you can actually avoid overfishing in single species fisheries, control that target quotas, switching to MSY or MEY, maximum economic yield, to actually decrease the amount of biomass while still keeping a sustainable yield. You can avoid overfishing in multi-species fisheries by being conscious of the low priority species and trying to not overfish those low priority fishes species in these multi-species stocks or schools. We can also rebuild populations, decrease bycatch, decrease discards. And if you see, all these actions are aimed at increasing or restoring the amount of biomass of fish that is already there. So if there is already carbon sequestered in these populations, we try to keep that carbon sequestered by protecting these populations or decreasing their bycatch. So any use that is not direct consumption and direct benefit should actually be decreased. We can also decrease the catch of small pelagics and zooplankton and move towards more middle trophic or upper trophic level species, given the abundance and a larger role within the carbon cycle of these small pelagics and their relevance as prey for quite a bit of other predators. We can reduce gear impact on the seabed, which causes the resuspension of carbon. And this can be done by gear modification or decreasing the use of that gear. There are multiple ways of improving best practices, even when you are using those gears. And then, of course, you can reduce illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. At the same time, you have these adaptation measures which reduce the vulnerability to harmful effects of climate change. And the aim here is to increase the resilience of the system. So we can protect mangroves or maintain and increase the diversity. We can also aim for effective fisheries management, which has been proven to be one of the best ways to actually keep and increase stocks healthy and in increasing biomasses. And of course, there are more coherent or integrated approaches such as ecosystem-based fisheries management and ecosystem-based management. There are several ways also in increasing the preparedness or reduce this vulnerability if, in addition, we start incorporating climate information into our everyday management or annual cycles of management. And this can be done via risk tables in stock assessments, which incorporate environmental information or population risks that policymakers can take into account to modify the quotas recommended by the stock assessments. We can also have ecosystem status report that also inform of environmental conditions that may be particularly deleterious or have an unfavorable impact in a given year, such as one of high marine heat waves, which can decrease recruitment or lower the availability of zooplankton, depending on the system you are on. And then, of course, we can also reduce pollution, which has detrimental effects on biological processes such as reproduction or growth. Other ways of reducing pollutions include reducing sewage outfall pipes and also eliminating, for example, medicines from the wastewater. Next one, please. So the important thing here is that we can actually do this as sort of cycle in which every time we evaluate an action, We consider what scale we want that action to be taken at, whether we want it local, at a province, at a state, or national level. And then we choose the policy instrument and the adequate timing within management to take that action. And you build on it year after year, or month after month, and revise it so that you cumulatively have a portfolio of multiple climate actions through time. Next one, please. The intent here is to have a live document which you can build up and with which you can actually create a good relationship between the policy makers, the managers, stakeholders, and the fishing industry itself. So, for example, you choose an action such as a mitigation of emission control, and you decide to do to increase the energy efficiency of the vessels. This is actually a good practice for fishermen, as they will decrease their costs. So it buys you a little bit of street cred and goodwill with the industry. You can choose to do this at a local scale, a state scale, or a national scale, depending on the impetus and how you want to drive that program. And then, of course, the policy instrument at the very lowest level could be just starting with a voluntary participation. You can then subsequently increase it to make it a policy, or to make it no longer voluntary, but actually to have vessels review their systems every so many years, or every other year, or at some regular interval. Next slide, please. So the intent here, again, is that over time, you build this portfolio, and you have quite a bit of liberty in choosing what mitigation actions and what adaptation actions you start building on first, to build a good rapport and a good relationship with the stakeholders and the fishing industry, and also with the different networking partners that you are going to have to collaborate. As you see, you can start very small at a town level or at a state level, which also many times implies a smaller scale in terms of the ecological context that you will, or the ecological processes that you will be able to improve upon. But as you scale it up, both in terms of spatial scale, policy instrument, or organizational, ecological organization level, you increase that network, and you will need to have more allies within that policy measure. So you'll have to coordinate across states, coordinate across nations, and different towns, and of course, more stakeholders. But you can always start by increasing these activities that definitely build a good rapport with the stakeholders. So we already mentioned the increase of energy efficiency of vessel, but you can also try to start a program where you increase byproducts. And by increasing byproducts, you are adding value to your catch. So for example, you can actually use fish leather to make wallets or fashion items, and you are just essentially trying to decrease the amount of fish waste in the boats. And by doing this, you will be not only saving carbon, but you will also be increasing the value of the catch and creating new markets. So this can actually be a win-win for everybody. And Iceland has done this successfully with salmon. They have actually created a system where they have masters fishmongers who teach other people how to best fillet the fish and how to clean it with the lowest amount of waste. And then they also save the skins, which, for example, in Alaska go to waste. they actually use it to make jackets and high leather fashion. So that's a big difference of how you can actually earn income from the same product. Subsequently, as you build these good rapport, you can then start putting other policies like decreasing discards or increasing marine protected areas. By doing so, you can develop a more resilient system through time. And again, every time you go through one of these management cycles, you can reassess what is the best option or what is the best action to go into next. And with that, I am going to leave it up to Rebecca, because now we're going to go into the workshop and see what questions you have on what information do you need, or how can we facilitate your enactment or your decision making when introducing these new actions.